नमस्कार तपाईलाई मेरो युट्युब च्यानलमा हार्दिक स्वागत छ। म कक्षा 12 को कम्पल्सरी इङ्ग्लिसमा रहेको माई ओल्ड होम स्टोरीको लाइन बाई लाइन एक्सप्लेनेसन लिएर उपस्थित भएको छु। ढिला नगरी सुरु गरौँ। माई ओल्ड होम बाई लु सुन। लु सुन को खास नाम जाओ सुरेन हो। उनी एउटा राम्रो परिवारबाट आएका व्यक्ति हुन्। उनको परिवार समृद्ध र विद्वान थियो र उनलाई चीनको महानतम लेखकहरूमध्ये एक मानिन्छ। उनी सर्ट स्टोरी राइटर, एसेइस्ट र ट्रान्सलेटर हुन् र उनलाई कमनली उनलाई आधुनिक चाइनिज साहित्यको पिताको रूपमा लिइन्छ। ही इज कमनली कन्सिडर्ड एज द फादर अफ मोडर्न चाइनिज लिटरेचर। उनका नोभलहरू सर्ट स्टोरी कलेक्सनहरू रहेका छन्। त्योमध्ये यो स्टोरी द माई ओल्ड होम चाहिँ होम टाउन भन्ने स्टोरी कलेक्सनबाट लिएको। माई ओल्ड होम इज अ स्टोरी अबाउट जुन्स मेमोरिज। यो उनको सम्झनाको बारेमा छ। फ्रम युथ टु मिडल एज, उनको जवानीको बेला या उनको टिनेजर हुने बेलाको, द्याट डिपिक्ट्स द कन्फ्लिक्ट बिट्विन मेमोरिज एन्ड रियालिटिज। उनको पुरानो बाल्यकालको याद र अहिलेको हालको वास्तविकता बीचको फरक र द्वन्द्वलाई यो कथामा देखाउन खोजिएको छ। द स्टोरी डिस्क्राइब्स हाउ सुन फिल्स while being away from home for many years. धेरै वर्ष उनी घर बाहिर बिताउँदा उनले कस्तो महसुस गर्छन् भन्ने कुरा यसमा देखाएको छ। Upon arriving at his long past home, his memories are forced to come to confront with the realities. उनको त्यो उनी धेरै वर्षपछि घर पुग्छन्। उनले पुराना सम्झनाहरूसँग एकपटक फेरि जुझ्न जान्छन् जो अहिलेको वास्तविकतासँग मेल खाँदैनन्। His prior conceptions and understandings of the world come into conflict with his realities. उसका पुराना यादहरू बुझाइ अहिलेको वास्तविकतासँग जुझ्न जान्छन्। यो कुराले कन्फ्लिक्ट देखिन्छ, द्वन्द्व देखिन्छ। सो द मेजर क्यारेक्टर इन द स्टोरी, लु सुन हाम्रो राइटर र नरेटर हो। रुन्टु फर्मर सर्भेन्ट अफ लु सुनकोमा काम गर्ने थियो र चाइल्डहुड फ्रेन्ड अफ सुन राइटर नरेटरको बाल्यकालको साथी हो। लु सुन्स मदर इज अनदर क्यारेक्टर। सुइसेङ इज रुन्टुज सन। Hunga, Lu Xun's nephew, and there is second sister Ang, who is also known as Benkard Beauty. So these are the major characters in the story. Lu Xun, Runtu, Lu Xun's mother, Suisang, Hunga, second sister Ang. So अब कथा यसरी सुरु हुन्छ। अब हामी यो कथाको लाइन बाई लाइन पढ्ने कोसिस गरौँ। Braving the bone cold weather, I was headed back to my hometown, a hometown from which I was separated by over 600 miles and more than 20 years. एकदम हड्डी कमाउने चिसो मौसममा म आफ्नो घरतर्फ जाँदैछु। मेरो घर जहाँ म 600 माइल टाढा र 20 वर्षदेखि म अलग भएको थिएँ। It was in the depth of winter and as I drew closer to the place where I had grown up, the sky clouded over and a cold wind whistled into the cabin of my boat. र यो चिसो मौसममा म त्यो ठाउँ जहाँ म जन्मिएको हुर्किएको थिएँ त्यो ठाउँको नजिक आउँदैछु। बादल लागेको छ र चिसो हावा मेरो बोटको कोठेसम्म आइपुगेको छ। Through a crack in the canopy, I peered out in the distance. र यो मैले क्यानोपीमा भएको सानो पालबाट या छिद्रबाट देखिरहेको छु। Scattered across the distant horizon, towns and villages come into view under a vast and growing sky. पर दूर शहर र गाउँहरू देखिरहेको छ। They were drab, desolate, devoid of any semblance of life. तर त्यो गाउँ एकदम डार्क, sad र कुनै जीवन नभए जस्तो निर्जीव देखिन्छ। I was assailed by a depression against which I was utterly powerless. मलाई चाहिँ एकदम दुःखले गाँच्छ, मलाई दुःख महसुस हुन्छ। No, this was not the countryside I had recalled time and again for more than 20 years. मलाई लाग्छ यो त्यो ठाउँ होइन जो मैले 20 वर्षदेखि सम्झिरहेको छु पटक पटक। The area I remember was far more lovely. जुन ठाउँको मलाई याद छ त्यो ठाउँ योभन्दा धेरै राम्रो छ, धेरै सुन्दर छ। And had you demanded that I summon its beauties from the recess of memory or catalogue its various excellences, no concrete image would have appeared in my mind's eye, and I would have been unable to reply. त्यो ठ्याक्कै के कुरा होला तैँले सम्झेको भन्दा म ठ्याक्कै त्यस्तो सम्झिन सक्दिनँ। तर मलाई त्यो महसुस छ माई होम टाउन वाज प्रोबेबली नथिङ मोर देन वाट ले बिफोर मी सायद यो मेरो गाउँ अहिले जे देखिएको छ त्यही नै होला दिस इज प्रोबेबली वाट इट रियली वाज लाइक आई टोल्ड माइसेल्फ सायद मेरो गाउँ यस्तै थियो होला भन्ने मलाई लाग्छ टु बी स्योर देयर आर नो साइन्स अफ प्रोग्रेस र वास्तवमै भन्नुपर्दा कुनै प्रगति भएको देखिँदैन बट देन अगेन इट्स प्रोबेबली नट सो डिप्रेसिङ एज आई सिम टु फिल एट द मोमेन्ट आइदर सायद यो त्यति दुःखद अवस्था पनि होइन होला perhaps it's just that my attitude had changed especially since I'm not coming back in a happy mood to begin with र सायद यो मेरो विचारै परिवर्तन भएर होला र किनकि म खुसी मुडका साथ यहाँ आइरहेको छैन My sole purpose in coming back this time was to bid my home an everlasting farewell. म यहाँ घरमा आउनुको उद्देश्य यो घरलाई अन्तिम पटक बिदाई गर्न हो The old family compound in which members of our clan had lived for so many years had already been sold up. जुन घर हाम्रो सयौं वर्षदेखि जो मानिसहरू यहाँ बसिरहेथे त्यो बेचिसकिएको छ Stock and barrel to people of another surname. अरू नै कोही मानिसहरूले यसलाई किनिसकेका छन् The transaction was to be completed by the end of the year. यो वर्षको अन्त्यमा सबै पैसाको लेनदेन पनि सकिनेवाला छ In the short interim before the new year, we would have to take our final leave of those comfortable old rooms and move away from this familiar countryside to this strange faraway place where I now earned my keep. र यो घरलाई बिदाई गरेर हामी त्यो नयाँ ठाउँमा जाँदैछौँ जहाँ मैले आफ्नो गुजारा चलाइरहेको छु Early the next morning, I stood before the gate of our family compound. र म भोलिपल्ट बिहान आफ्नो घर अगाडि उभिएको छु Up on the tiled roof, broken stalks of withered vines trembled in the wind and made plain the reason it had not been possible to keep those old rooms from changing hands. अब त्यो लहराहरू देखिरहेको छु मैले घर देखिरहेको छु र त्यो पुराना कोठाहरू अब बदलिँदैछन् The pervading silence suggested that several branches of the family must have already moved out. र सुनसान त्यो बस्ती घर देखिँदाखेरि धेरै मानिसहरू सबै बस्ती गइसकेको देखिन्छ By the time I made my way back to the rooms that our branch occupied, my mother had already come out to greet me. त्यसपछि म त्यता घरतिर लाग्छु जहाँ हाम्रो घर परिवार बसिरहेको थियो आमा आउनुहुन्छ मलाई अभिवादन गर्न My 8-year-old nephew Hunger darted out from behind her. र मेरो भतिजो Hunger पनि आमाको पछि आइरहेछ Though she was obviously happy to see me, आमा मलाई देखेर खुसी हुनुहुन्थ्यो तैपनि I also read hints of melancholy in her face. तर मैले आमाको अनुहारमा दुःख पीडा देखेँ She bade me sit down and rest, gave me some tea. मलाई आमाले बस्न भन्नुभयो र चिया दिनुभयो but avoided any mention of the impending move. तर बसाइ सर्ने कुरा गर्नु भएन Hunger, whom I had never seen before, stood off at a distance observing me. Hunger जसलाई मैले अहिलेसम्म देखेको थिएन ऊ अलि पर मलाई हेरेर बसिरहेको थियो At long last we broached the subject of moving. अब बल्ल हामीले बसाइसराईको कुरा गर्न थाल्यौँ I said I had already rented a place for us and even bought a few sticks of furniture. मैले भने कि मैले एउटा घर कोठामा लिएको छु भाडामा र मैले केही फर्निचर पनि किनेको छु भनेर भने I explained that we would have to sell our household goods down here and then use the money to buy whatever else we might need up on earth. अनि यहाँ बेचेर जे पैसा आउँछ त्यो पैसाले हामी माथि किन्नुपर्छ भनेर भने Mother readily assented. आमाले स्वीकृति दिनुभयो She already had our baggage pretty much gathered together and ready to go. अनि सबै धेरै जसो ब्यागेजहरू तयार भइसकेको थियो अनि हामी जानको लागि तयार थियौँ On her own initiative, she had even sold the heavy furniture that couldn't readily be moved. अनि जुन गाह्रा र गरुङ्गा फर्निचरहरू उहाँले बेचिसक्नु भएको थियो She had not yet, however, been able to collect the money people owed for her for it. तर उहाँले पैसा चाहिँ उठाइसक्नु भएको थिएन As soon as you have rested a day or so, you can make the rounds of our relatives and then we'll be all set, she told me. र तिमी के आराम गरेको दिन त्यसपछि यसो नातेदारहरू भेट्नुपर्छ त्यसपछि जान हामी तयार हुन्छौँ भन्यो आमाले Yes, mother. And don't forget to see Runtu. अनि रुन्टुलाई पनि भेट भन्नुभयो He asks for you every time he comes by. अनि रुन्टु जहिले पनि आउँदाखेरि तिम्रो बारेमा सोधिरहेको हुन्छ भनेर भन्नुभयो Says he would really like to see you again. उसले भन्छ कि तपाईँलाई भेट्न मन लाग्छ भनेर. I told him around what day you would be back so he could show up must anytime. र मैले कहिले आउँछ भनेर उसलाई भनेको छु, सायद ऊ जहिले पनि आउन सक्छ. Instantaneously a marvelous scene flashed before my eyes. र तत्कालै मलाई एउटा गजबको राम्रो scene दृश्य मेरो आँखा अगाडि चम्कियो. A round moon hanging against a blue-black sky. Beneath it a stretch of sandy ground planted with emerald green watermelons stretching as far as the eye could see. र मैले तुरुन्तै सफा आकाश मुनि तल लामो जमिनमा हरिया वाटरमेलनहरू फैलिएको जमिन देखेँ. And standing in the midst of all those melons, र ती तरबुजको बीचमा a 12-year-old boy, 12 वर्षको केटो, a silver ring around his neck, घाँटीमा चाहिँ एउटा चाँदीको रिङ लगाएको, a pitchfork in his hand, र हातमा चाहिँ pitchfork समाएको, pitchfork बनाएर यो. Suddenly and with all his might the boy stabs at a jaw. यो jaw animal, त्यहाँ देखिएको animal. But the crafty animal makes a lightning turn. तर त्यो मजाले भाग्छ, turns back between his legs, टाङमुनिबाट छिर्छ, and makes its good escape, र भाग्न सफल हुन्छ. The boy in that scene was Runtu. र त्यो दृश्यमा भएको मान्छे Runtu हो. Back when I first met him, जब मैले उसलाई पहिलोपल्ट भेटेको थिएँ, it will soon be 30 years ago. सायद 30 वर्ष जति भयो. I couldn't have been much more than 10 myself. म पनि 10 वर्ष मात्रै थिएँ. Since my father was still alive at the time, त्यो बेला बुवा पनि जीवित हुनुहुन्थ्यो. Our family was still fairly well to do. हाम्रो परिवार हुने खाने नै थियो. And I was something of a young gentleman. र म भर्खरको केटो थिएँ. That particular year it was incumbent upon our branch of the clan to perform a certain sacrifice that rolled around. र हामीलाई त्यो वर्ष हाम्रो परिवारलाई त्यो विशेष बलि दिनुपर्ने भाग परेको थियो. Or oh, so it was said, अथवा यस्तो भनियो. Only every 30 odd years, त्यो 30 वर्षमा त्यो काम गरिन्थ्यो. Consequently, it was to be an occasion of great solemnity. त्यो भएर एकदम गम्भीर रूपमा गरिनु पर्थ्यो त्यो काम. During the first month, images of our ancestors would be displayed on the altar. अनि पहिलो महिना हाम्रो पिता पुर्खाको फोटा तस्बिरहरू अल्टर भनेको टेबलमा चाहिँ राखिन्थ्यो. The offerings set out before them would be lavish and the sacrificial utensils exquisite. र त्यहाँ पूजाका सामग्रीहरू राखिएको हुन्थ्यो, बलि दिने सामग्रीहरू राखिएको हुन्थ्यो. With so many people participating, it would be necessary to guard against theft. र त्यहाँ चोरी हुन सक्ने सम्भावना भएकाले कसैले त्यसलाई सुरक्षित रूपमा हेर्नुपर्ने हुन्थ्यो. However, we had only one busy month to help out. He already had more work than he could keep up with. र हामीसँग एकजना मात्रै कामदार थियो जो पहिले आफू फुर्सदमा थिएन, उसलाई अति धेरै काम थियो. And so he suggested that his son Runtu be brought in to keep an eye on the sacrificial vessels. त्यो भएपछि उसले आफ्नो छोरा रुन्टुलाई बोलाउँछु यो सामग्रीहरू हेर्नलाई भनेर भन्यो. Down home, workers were divided into 3 categories. र कामदारहरू 3 प्रकारका हुने गर्थे. If they worked the whole year long for one family, they were year-longs. यदि कुनै एउटा निश्चित परिवारको लागि वर्षभरि काम गर्छन् भने त्यसलाई year-longs भनिन्थ्यो. If they worked by the day, they were short-timers. एक दिनका लागि मात्रै काम गर्थे, दिउँसो मात्रै काम गर्थे भने short-timers भनिन्थ्यो. And if they tilled their work on land but worked for a specific family just during the holidays or when rents were collected, they were busy monthers. र कुनै विशेष प्रयोजनमा चाडपर्व र विशेष काममा चाहिँ आयो भने तिनलाई भनिन्थ्यो busy monthers. Since I had heard about Runtu for a long time, मैले रुन्टुको बारेमा पहिला पनि सुनेको थिएँ. I was glad when father agreed. र बुवाले हुन्छ भनेपछि म बहुत खुसी भएँ. I knew he was about my own age. मलाई थाहा थियो ऊ मेरै उमेरको. He had been born in the Run month and among the 5 elements he was lacking only in 2, Run and 2. So his father had called him Runtu. त्यो रुन महिनामा जन्मेको र उसले 5 तत्त्वमध्ये 2 नभएकोले उसलाई Runtu भनेर नाम राखिएको. Best of all, Runtu knew all about how to set snares and catch birds. उसलाई कसरी जाल थाप्ने, कसरी चरा मार्ने थाहा थियो. From that time on, I looked forward eagerly to the new year. मलाई नयाँ वर्षको एकदम व्यग्र प्रतीक्षा भयो. For I knew that when it came to wood, so would Runtu. अनि किनकि त्यो नयाँ वर्ष आउँदा रुन्टु पनि आउँछ भन्ने मलाई थाहा थियो. It seemed that this year would never end. मलाई लाग्यो यो वर्ष किन सकिँदैन. But the day did finally arrive when mother summoned me to announce that Runtu had come and was now in the kitchen. र मलाई त्यो दिन पनि आयो र आमाले भन्नुभयो कि रुन्टु आछ, ऊ अहिले भान्सामा छ. I ran as fast as my legs would carry me. म दौडिएर जतिसक्दो चाँडो त्यहाँ पुगेँ. He had a purplish round face. उसको रातो गाला गोलो अनुहार थियो and wore a little felt hat र टोपी लगाएको थियो. He could tell that his father loved him very much because around his neck he wore a large shimmering silver ring. र उसले घाँटीमा एउटा चाँदीको रिङ लगाएको थियो. That meant that his father had feared that he might die during childhood and had taken him before a statue of the Buddha where, in exchange for the protection of his son, he promised to do something for the Buddha in return. र उसले त्यहाँ बुद्ध मूर्तिमा गएर उसलाई मर्छ कि भन्ने डर भएर उसले बुद्धसँग त्यो उसको सुरक्षाको लागि त्यो रिङ लगाएको थियो. It was then that they would have put that neck ring on to show that Runtu was tied to life and protected by Buddha. त्यो बुद्धले बचाउने बुद्धको बाट सुरक्षित छ भने त्यो रिङ संकेत थियो. Runtu was shy with the adults around our house but wasn't at all timid with me. Runtu ठुला मान्छेहरूसँग चाहिँ लाज मान्थ्यो, अप्ठ्यारो मान्थ्यो, तर मसँग कुनै लाज शरम मान्दैन थियो. And would talk a blue streak. मजाले कुरा गर्थ्यो मसँग. Whenever we were by ourselves. हामी एक्लै हुँदा मजाले कुरा गर्थ्यो. Before half the day was out, we had actually gotten to know each other quite well. हामीले आधा दिनमै एकअर्कालाई मजाले चिन्यौँ. I can't recall what we talked about. I only remember how excited and happy Runtu was. मैले के कुरा गरेँ मलाई खासै याद छैन, तर हामी एकदम खुसी थियौँ. रुन्टु पनि खुसी थियो. He told me that this was the first time he had ever been to town and that he had already seen all sorts of strange and wondrous things he had never even dreamed of before. र रुन्टुले भन्छ कि उसले सहर पहिलोचोटि देखेको र त्यो सहरमा उसले अचम्मको चिजहरू देख्यो जो उसले सपनामा पनि चिताएको देखेको थिएन. The next day I wanted him to catch birds. मैले अर्को दिन भने चरा समात्नुपर्छ भनेर. Can't right now. अहिले त सकिँदैन भन्छ रुन्टुले. You have to have lots of snow. हिउँ परेपछि मात्रै. Out by the ocean where we live, I always wait till there is a good snowfall. हामी त snowfall भएपछि मात्रै चरा समात्छौँ भन्छ. Then I sweep a place nice and clean. म ठाउँमा सफा गर्छु. ठाउँ take a little stick एउटा लट्ठी लिन्छु and prop up a big bamboo basket. र मैले एउटा त्यहाँ bamboo भनेको बाँसको basket बनाउँछु. I sprinkle some grain underneath and tie a string to the bottom of the stick. त्यसपछि मैले त्यहाँ केही अन्नहरू राख्छु, त्यसको मुनि एउटा डोरीले बाँध्छु. Then I back way off and wait for the birds to come. त्यसपछि म चराहरू आउने कुरेर बस्छु. One little tug and I've got them. र एकचोटि म यसो चलाउँछु, डोरी तान्छु र त्यो चराहरू मेरो कब्जामा पर्छन्. A little bit of everything. Blue backs, horned chicks, paddy chicks, pigeons र धेरै थरीका चराहरू त्यहाँ पर्थे. How I longed for snow. मलाई हिउँ कहिले पर्ला जस्तो भयो. It's kind of cold now that you come out our way in the summer. यो कस्तो चिसो छ अहिले त. तर तिमी समरको बेला हाम्रोमा आउनुपर्छ. Days we could go out to the beach and collect shells. जो बेला हामी समुद्रमा गएर सेलहरू, reds, blues, ghost scares, हामी सेलहरू कलेक्ट गर्न सक्छौँ. Guardian hands. Nights when dad and me go to guard the watermelon pads, you could go right along our research. अनि हामी watermelon हेर्ने बेला त्यहाँ खेतीमा हेर्न जाने बेला तिमी पनि आउन सक्छौ भन्छ. Are you afraid people are going to steal your melons? चोरी हुन्छ भनेर डर लाग्छ तिमीलाई भन्छ. Nope. If somebody happens to be walking by and picks one cause you're thirsty, we don't take that as stealing. Are you afraid people are going to steal your melons? के तिमी त्यो melons चोर्छ भनेर डराएको हो? Nope. If somebody happens to be walking by and picks one cause is thirsty, यदि कोही हिँड्छ त्यहाँ तिर्खा लाएर टिप्छ खान्छ भने, we don't take that as stealing. हामी त्यसलाई चोरेको भन्दैनौँ. What we are looking out for are badgers, porcupines and हामी त त्यहाँ जनावरहरूलाई हेर्नको लागि जान्छौँ. When the moon's out and you hear a crunch, you know you have got a job biting into a melon. अब राति हिँड्यौँ र आवाज सुन्यौँ भने के थाहा हुन्छ भन्दा त्यहाँ आएर एउटा जनावरले खाइरहेछ. You grab your pitchfork and त्यो भएपछि तपाईँले आफ्नो pitchfork लिनुहुन्छ अनि भन्छ. At the time, I didn't know what sort of thing a job was to begin with. Still don't as a matter of fact, but somehow or other I felt it must look like some sort of little dog and be fierce as all get out. र मलाई झ्याक कस्तो हुन्छ भनेर थाहा थिएन. अहिले पनि खासै थाहा छैन. मलाई लाग्थ्यो कि एउटा कुकुर जस्तो हुन्छ र अलि खतरनाक पनि हुन्छ. Won't it bite you? टोक्दैन भनेर सोधेँ मैले. Well, you've got your pitchfork, right? हैन pitchfork हुन्छ नि त त्यो यो चाहिँ fork मैले अघि देखाएको थिएँ नि त्यो. You sneak up on him and when you have got him inside, you let him have it. अनि हामी लुकेर बस्छौँ अनि त्यो आएपछि हामी त्यसलाई pitchforkले हान्छौँ. Are those little guys ever quick on their feet? कतिको छिटो दौड्छन्? They will turn around and run right back between your legs if you don't watch them. यदि हेरेन भने तिनीहरू टाङमुनिबाटै छिरेर दौडिन सक्छन्. They have got these coats all slippery slick like well and त्यसको छाला एकदम चिफ्लो हुन्छ. I had never dreamed that the world was full of so many new and marvelous things. म अचम्म परे कि कति धेरै नयाँ चिजहरू र अचम्म लाग्दा चिजहरू यो संसारमा रहेछन्. Just to think that the seashore had all those wonderful colored shells to offer. समुद्रको किनारमा कति धेरै रमाइला खालका राम्रा रङ्गी-चङ्गी सेलहरू पाइँदो रहेछ भनेर मैले थाहा पाएँ. And even watermelons had a danger-filled story behind them that I had never suspected. त्यही तरबुजामा पनि कति धेरै रमाइलो कथाहरू रहेछन् मैले कहिले शङ्कै गरेन थाहै पाएन. All I had known was that you buy them in fruit stores. म त पसलमा गएर किन्ने मात्रै कुरा थाहा थियो मलाई. फ्रुट स्टोरमा गएर किन्ने. Out there by the seashore just before spring tides, you will see a whole bunch of jumper fish hopping all over the place. अब तिमी पछि समुद्री किनारमा जम्पर फिसहरू देख्न सक्छौ. उफ्रिरहेका हुन्छन् जतासुकै भन्छ. They have got those two little legs on them like frogs. तिनको फ्रगको जस्तै भ्याकुताको जस्तै खुट्टा हुन्छ दुईटा भन्छ. Wow, Runtu's mind was an inexhaustible treasure house of exotic things. रुन्टुलाई धेरै अचम्म लाग्दा नयाँ नयाँ चिजहरू थाहा थियो. Things my everyday friends knew nothing about. जुन कुरा मेरा साथीहरूलाई थाहै थिएन. For while Runtu was out there by the sea, they, like me, had nothing to look out on but the square patch of sky that was visible above the high walls of family courtyard. र मेरा साथीहरूलाई माथिको आकाश बाहेक अरू कुनै चिज देखिँदैन थियो किनकि अग्ला अग्ला पर्खालले उनीहरूले केही पनि हेर्न पाउँदैनथे. Unfortunately, the first month of New Year came to an end and Runtu had to go home. र दुर्भाग्यवश नयाँ वर्षको सबै समारोहहरू सकियो. रुन्टु घर जाने बेला भयो. I wailed. म रोएँ. He cried too. ऊ पनि रोयो. In the end, however, his father took him away. तर अन्तिममा उसको बुवाले चाहिँ उसलाई लिएर जानुभयो. Later on, he sent me a package of shells by way of his father and some beautiful bird feathers too. पछि उसले मलाई समुद्रमा पाइने सेल्सहरू चाहिँ एक बुवासँग पठाइदिएको थियो र केही चराको रङ्गी-चङ्गी प्वाखहरू पनि. And I also sent him some things a few times after that, but I never saw him again. र मैले पनि उसलाई केही चिजहरू पठाइदिन्थेँ बुवा मार्फत किनकि उसको बुवा त त्यहाँ काम गर्न आउँथ्यो. Now, when my mother said that Runtu might drop by, अनि जब आमाले मलाई भन्नुभयो कि रुन्टु आउँछ होला भनेर, memories of my boyhood suddenly came alive again as though illuminated by a brilliant flash of lightning. र मलाई सबै बाल्यकालमा गरेका कुराहरू फ्ल्यासमा आए. एक्कासी सबै मेरो दिमागमा आए. For a fraction of a second, केही सेकेन्डको लागि, I even seemed to recapture that beautiful homeland I thought I had lost. र मलाई त्यो मेरो सुन्दर बाल्यकालको फेरि एकचोटि सम्झना आयो जो मलाई लाग्थ्यो कि मैले गुमाइसकेँ. Great, I said. गजब. How is he doing these days? के गर्दैछ कसो गर्दैछ उसले भनेर मैले सोधेँ. Now, अहिले well, things aren't going all It's all well for him. उसको लागि राम्रो छैन दिनहरू. Mother turned and looked outside. Yes, she answered. आमाले उता बाहिर हेर्दै भन्नुभयो. Those people are back again. ल ती मान्छे फेरि आएछन्. Pretend they are looking at the furniture and then make off with whatever they can get hold of. I'd better go out and keep an eye on them. फर्निचर हेर्ने बाहना गरेर आउँछन् र जे सामान भेट्टायो पाएसम्म लिएर हिँड्छन्. म बाहिर जान्छु तिनलाई हेर्छु भनेर आमाले भन्नुभयो. Mother got up and went out. I could hear the voices of several women outside the door. अनि आमा बाहिर जानुभयो र मैले बाहिर धेरै महिलाहरू कुरा गरेको सुने. I motioned to Hunger to come over and chat with me. मैले हुङ्गरलाई मतिर आऊ भनेर इसारा गरेँ. I asked him if he knew how to write it and if he was looking forward to our trip. अनि उसलाई तिमीलाई लेख्न आउँछ कि नै भनेर सोधेँ. अनि जानियो यात्रामा जानियो भनेर भने. Will we get to ride a train? अनि उसले सोध्यो ट्रेन चढ्न पाइन्छ? Yes, हो पाइन्छ. A boat too? अनि बोट पनि चढ्छौँ. First we take a boat and then पहिला बोट चढ्छौँ त्यसपछि train. Would you look at him now? He has even got a beard. A strange shrill voice suddenly slashed through the air. तिमीलाई उसलाई भेट्न मन लाग्छ? उसको त अहिले दाढी पनि छ. एउटा चर्को आवाज आयो. Startled, म छक्क परेँ. I quickly raised my head and saw a woman of 50 or so standing before me. अनि लगभग 50 जतिको एउटा महिला म अगाडि उभिएकी थिइन्. Her cheekbones protruded and her lips were thin. र उनको गालाको हड्डी माथि उठेको थियो र ओठहरू पातला थिए. Wearing a pair of trousers, hand on her hips, legs wide apart, she stood balanced on a pitiful little pair of bound feet, looking for all the world like a pair of compasses out of someone's drafting kit. अनि पछि पुठ्यौमा हात राखेर खुट्टाहरू फाटो गरेर अनि उभिरहेकी थिइन्, जसले गर्दा उनी ज्योमेट्री बक्समा भएको कम्पास जस्तो चाहिँ देखिन्थिन्. Don't recognize me, huh? मलाई चिनेनौ? I used to hold you in my arms when you were just a kid. म त तिमीलाई आफ्नै हातमा खेलाएको नि तिमी बच्चा हुँदा. I was even more at loss. मैले चिन्नै सकेन. Fortunately, my mother came back in at this juncture and said, र यो आपतमा मलाई आमाले बचाउनु भयो अनि भन्नुभयो. He has been away a good many years and he has forgotten everything. उ त धेरै वर्ष भएको नि गएको, उसले सबै बिर्सिसक्यो. Then she turned to me. But you really ought to remember her. तर तिमीले चिन्नु पर्ने. She is second sister Ang. उनी second sister Ang हुन्. You know, the woman who lived kitty corner to our place and ran the bean curd shop. अनि तिम्रो त्यहाँ पर छेउमा चाहिँ bean curd shop. यो bean curd भन्ने चाहिँ हुन्छ टोफु भन्ने हुन्छ एउटा. यो चाहिँ मासुको पिठोबाट चीज बनाइन्छ तरकारी खानको लागि. त्यो बेच्ने पसललाई चाहिँ हामी bean curd shop भन्छौँ. Now I remember, र मैले अहिले सम्झेँ, when I was a little child, there had been a second sister Ang sitting from one end of the day to other in the bean curd shop diagonally across from us. मैले याद आयो, हामी बच्चा हुँदा second sister Ang चाहिँ पर पसलमा अगाडिपट्टि bean curd बेचेर बस्थिन्. People called her the bean curd beauty. उनलाई मानिसहरू bean curd beauty भनेर बोलाउँथे. Back then she used to powder her face. उनी त्यो बेला पाउडर दल्थिन् अनुहारमा. And her cheekbones went to so high. अनि उनको गालाको हड्डीहरू त्यस्तो टुक्लुक्क बाहिर उठेका थिएनन्. Nor were her lips so thin. उनको मोठ त्यस्तो पातलो थिएन. What was more, since she had always been seated, I had never before seen this compasses pose of hers. र उनलाई मैले कहिले पनि यसरी उभिएको बाहिर देखेको थिइनँ. उनी दोकानमा बसिरहेकी हुन्थिन् र आज यो कम्पास जस्तो स्वरूप मैले आज पहिलो पटक देखेँ. Back then people used to say that she was the reason the shop did such a surprisingly good business. मान्छे भन्थे उनकै कारण त्यो दोकान त्यति राम्रोसँग चलेको थियो. No doubt because of my tender age र मेरो सानो उमेरका कारण I must have been immune to the alchemy of her charms. र उनको त्यो सुन्दरताप्रति मलाई कुनै मतलब थिएन किनकि मेरो उमेर सानो थियो for I had forgotten her completely र मैले उनलाई पूर्ण रूपमा बिर्सेको रहेछु thus compasses was more than a little put out with me त्यो भएपछि उनी मसँग अलिकति रिसाइन् बिर्सियो चिनेन भनेर she looked at me with utter disdain and kind of smile that one might wear upon discovering a Frenchman who had never heard of Napoleon or an American who didn't know who Washington was मलाई उनले अलिकति घृणा रिसका साथ चाहिँ हेरिरहेछिन् जस्तो एउटा फ्रेन्चम्यानले नेपोलियनको नामै नसुन्दाखेरि जस्तो हुन्छ अथवा एउटा अमेरिकनले वाशिङटन भनेको को भनेर नचिने हुन्छ त्यस्तै उनले मलाई घृणा तिरस्कारको रूपमा हेरिन् Her laugh was cold उनी अलि चिसो भएर हाँसिन् Forgot बिर्स्यो मलाई Case of the higher you go the snootier you यो त उही भयो जति माथि गयो उति तिमीले अब बदमासी या फटाई काम गर्यौ How could I ever be like that? Why I? मैले किन त्यस्तो गर्दा भनेर completely flustered I stood up. म अलिकति रिसाउँदै उठेँ मैले किन त्यस्तो गर्दा म त्यस्तो थाहा छैन भन्छन् Well, in that case, elder brother soon I'll put it right up front. म सिधै भन्छु तिमीलाई You are rich now and it's not all that easy to move big heavy stuff anyway, so why not let me take all this rickety old furniture off your hands. अब म तिमीलाई सिधै कुरा भन्छु तिमी त धनी छौ तिमीलाई केही समस्या छैन यी ठुला फर्निचर जो यहाँबाट उठाउन गाह्रो छ त्यो फर्निचरहरू मलाई देऊ भनेर भन्छन् Poor folks like us can still get a lot of use out of it. हामीलाई त केही न केही काम लाग्छ I'm not rich at all. I have to sell furniture just too. अब यसले राइटरले भन्छ कि म त्यस्तो धनी कहाँ छु र म फर्निचर बेचेर भन्दैछ उसले के गरेँ भन्दैछ अनि उसले चाहिँ कुरा काटिहाल्छ कम अफ इट हे नचाहिने कुरा गर्छौ आई नो यु आर अ बिग अफिसियल that high they say तिमी त ठुलो अफिसर हो ठुलो कर्मचारी भएको छौ and you are gonna stand there and tell me you are not rich अनि तिमी भन्छौ कि तिमी धनी छैनौ भनेर you have got 3 concubines तिमीरा त तीनटा त रखौली राखेका छौ तिमीले रखौटीहरू रखेलहरू and an 8-man sedentary team to carry you around whenever you want to go अनि तिमी पाल्कीमा 8 जना मान्छेले बोकेर तिमीलाई वरपर दलाइजान्छन् not rich huh you can't put anything over on me मलाई झुट बोल्छ ढाँट्छौ भनेर चाहिँ उनले भन्छन् I knew it would make no difference no matter what I said so I held my peace and simply stood there अब मैले भनेर केही नहुने ठानेपछि म चुप लागेर उभिरहेँ Yep it's true all right The more money they get, the less they will turn loose. साँच्चै रहेछ जति मान्छे धनी हुन्छ उति चुत्थो बन्दो रहेछ भनेर उनले भनिन् And the less they turn loose, the more they get. जति पायो उति चुत्थो हुँदो रहेछ मान्छे Compasses angrily turned her back to me and slowly walked away. अनि त्यो कम्पास चाहिँ ती महिला रिसाइन् र उनी हिँड्न थालिन् त्यहाँबाट Issuing a steady stream of chatter as she went. र उनी बरबराउँदै अगाडि बढिन् On her way out, she picked up a pair of my mother's gloves. र बाटोबाट निस्किँदै गर्दाखेरि उनले चाहिँ आमाको त्यो पन्जाहरू त्यहाँ राखिरहेको पन्जालाई उठाइन् and soaked them into the waistband of her trouser र ट्राउजरमा कोचिन् During the next few days, clansmen and relatives who lived nearby came around to pay visits. अनि त्यहाँ केही दिनसम्म त्यहाँ छरछिमेकहरू नातेदारहरू उनलाई भेट्न आए I made these social obligations as best I could, stealing time from them whenever possible to finish packing. अब मैले सो समयहरू चोर्दै उनीहरूलाई भेटेँ र प्याकिङ पनि गर्दै राखेँ One very cold afternoon, just after lunch, I was sitting and drinking tea when I heard someone come in from the outside. र म एक दिन लन्च खाएर बाहिर चिया पिएर बसिरहेको थिएँ मैले आवाज सुने कोही बाहिर आछ When I turned around to look, I couldn't help but start with surprise. र जब मैले पछाडि फर्केर हेरेँ मैले देखेँ र चकित भएँ म I scrambled to my feet and rushed over to welcome him. र म हतार हतार गरेर अगाडि बढेँ र उसलाई स्वागत गरेँ It was Runtu. ऊ रुन्टु थियो Although I recognized him right off, मैले उसलाई चिनिहालेँ He was not at all the Runtu who lived in my memory. तर ऊ मैले मेरो यादमा भएको रुन्टु जस्तो थिएन He seemed twice as tall now, ऊ त दोब्बर अग्लो भइसकेको थियो. The round and ruddy face of Esther ear had already turned pale and grey. उसको जुन रातो गोलो अनुहार अहिले फिक्का र फुर्सो बनेको थियो. And it was etched with deep wrinkles. र उसमा चाउरीपनाहरूले भरिएको थियो अनुहार. The rims of his eyes were sullen and just red, just like his father's. र उसको आँखाका नानीहरू रिमहरू त्यो खोपेल्टा चाहिँ सुनिएको थियो र राता आँखा भएका थिए. I knew that most farmers who worked close to the sea got that way because of the wind. र समुद्र किनारमा काम गर्ने अधिकांशको आँखा हावाका कारणले यस्तै हुन्थ्यो. He was wearing a battered old felt hat. उसले टोपी लगाइरहेको थियो यहाँ देखाए जस्तो felt hat. And his cotton clothes were so thin that he was shivering. र उसको पातलो कपडा यति पातलो थियो कि उसले चिसोले कामिरहेको थियो. His hands held a paper package along with his pipe. उसले चुरोट पाइप सँगै एउटा पेपरमा पोको पनि लिएर आएको थियो. They were not the smooth and nimble hands. उसका हातहरू नरम थिएनन्. That I remembered, just जुन मैले सम्झिन्थेँ उसका हातहरू. Now they were rough, clumsy and as cracked as pine bark. र अहिले उसको हातहरू पुरै फुटिएर चर्किएका थिए जस्तो सल्लाको बोक्राहरू हुन्छ. I was beside myself with enthusiasm but didn't know how to begin and simply said, Brother Runtu, you have come. म यति उत्साहित थिएँ कि मैले कसरी सुरु गर्ने भनेर मैले कुरा गर्नै थाहा भएन र मैले भने, Brother Runtu, तिमी आयौ. There was so much I wanted to say. मलाई यति धेरै कुरा भन्नु थियो. There were so many words. यति धेरै शब्दहरू थिए. Waiting to gush out. बाहिर निस्किन चाहन्थे. One after the other like pearls on a string. यसरी मोती धागोमा बुनिएको जस्तै एक एक गरेर म शब्दहरू आउन चाहन्थ्यो. Horn chicks, jumper fish, Guinean hand, ja, but at the same time I was aware of something damming them up inside me. मलाई धेरै कुरा गर्नु थियो तर मलाई केही कुराले रोकिरहेको थियो, ब्लकिङ गरिरहेको थियो, damming. So that they simply swelled around. भित्र मडारियो मात्रै in my brain without a single one coming out. र मैले कुनै कुरा पनि बाहिर निकाल्न सकेन, भित्र मडारिरह्यो. As he stood there, his expression was a mixture of happiness and melancholy. र म उभिरहँदाखेरि म खुसी र दुखीको बीचमा मेरो अनुभव, मेरो भावना बगिरहेको थियो. His lips began to move. उसको पनि ओठहरू चल्न थाल्यो. But not a single word came out. तर ऊ पनि बोल्न सकेन. Finally, he assumed a very respectful attitude and addressed me in a loud, clear voice. Master. अनि एकछिनपछि ऊ सम्हालियो र उसले भन्यो, एकदम आदरणीय स्वरमा सम्बोधन गर्यो, मास्टर या मालिक भनेर. I shuddered. म छक्क परेँ. I realized what a wretched thick wall now stood between us. अचानक एउटा ठुलो पर्खाल हामी बीचमा उभिएको महसुस गरेँ. I too was at a loss for words. म केही बोल्न सकिरहेको थिएन. He turned around and said, उसले त फर्किएर भन्यो, Susang, kotao to the master. अनि उसले सुसेङ आफ्नो छोरालाई चाहिँ भनेर अभिवादन गर मास्टरलाई भनेर भन्यो, मालिकलाई अभिवादन गर भन्यो. He grabbed a child who up to this point had been hiding behind him and hauled him around front. जुन बच्चो पछाडि लुकिरहेको थियो उसको छोरो त्यो बच्चोलाई अगाडि ल्याएर देखायो. This boy was Runtu 20 years ago. र यो केटो रुन्टु जस्तो थियो 20 वर्ष अगाडिको. Although somewhat paler and thinner than his father had been. तर बुवा भन्दा अलि पातलो थियो, अलि फुर्सो थियो. The only real difference was that Susang had no silver neck ring. र सुसेङसँग त्यो चाँदीको घाँटीमा लगाउने रिङ थिएन. This is my fifth. यो मेरो पाँचौं छोरो. Hasn't been out and around much. यो खासै बाहिर आएन. So he is pretty shy. त्यो अलि लाज मान्छ भनेर चाहिँ रुन्टुले भन्यो. Mother and Hunger must have heard us talking because they came down from the upstairs. अनि हङ्गर र मदरले पनि सुन्नुभयो होला सायद कुरा, उहाँहरू माथि आउनुभयो. Old Mrs, I got your letter a long time back. You don't know how happy I was to hear the master was coming home, said Runtu. अनि उसले भन्यो आमालाई भनेर कि मैले तपाईको खबर पाथेँ, म एकदम खुसी थिएँ मास्टरहरू चाहिँ आउँदै हुनुहुन्छ भनेर सुनेर भनेर रुन्टुले भन्यो. Hey, what in the world's come over you that you are so formal? तिमी यस्तो किन औपचारिक कुरा गरिरहेछौ? यस्तो किन औपचारिक हुनु पर्यो? किन मास्टर मालिक भन्नु पर्यो? You two used to call each other brother. तिमी त एकअर्कालाई ब्रदर भन्थ्यौ नि त, दाजुभाइ भन्थ्यौ. Just call him brother soon. Brother soon भन न. The way you used to. तिमी यसरी बोलाउँथ्यौ नि त. The brother भन. Ah, the old missus is really too. What kind of manners would that be? ओहो, त्यस्तो भन्न कहाँ मिल्छ? त्यस्तो मलाई त्यो सभ्य कुरा हुन्छ र म्यानर हो र त्यो भन्छ. We were just kids then. त्यो बेला त हामी केटाकेटी नै थियौँ. We didn't know any better. हामीलाई राम्रो कुरा थाहै थिएन. While Runtu was talking, he was also trying to get Suseng to bow to my mother, but the boy was very embarrassed and stuck like glue to his father's back. यो कुरा गर्दै रुन्टुले आफ्नो छोरा सुसेङलाई चाहिँ यता मालिकनीलाई चाहिँ झुकेर अभिवादन गर्न भन्दै थियो, तर केटो चाहिँ मानिरहेको थिएन. ऊ एकदम लाज मानेर बुवाको पछाडि लुकिरहेको थियो. इज द्याट सुसेङ योर फिफ्थ? मदर आस्क्ड. तिम्रो पाँचौँ छोरो सुसेङ हो यो भनेर आमाले सोध्नुभयो. टु हिम वी आर अल स्ट्रेन्जर्स. यसले त कसैलाई चिनेकै छैन. स्ट्रेन्जर भनेको अपरिचित हामी सबै. नो वन्डर ही सो साई. त्यही भएर लाज माने होला, साई भयो. वाइ नट लेट हिम एन्ड हङ्गर गो आउट टुगेदर एन्ड प्ले. यो हङ्गर उसलाई पठाइदेऊ न, यिनीहरू खेल्छन् सँगै भनेर आमाले भन्नुभयो. When Hunger heard that, he immediately ran over and greeted the boy. यो सुन्ने बित्तिकै हङ्गर दौडेर गयो र त्यो केटासँग या रुन्टुको छोरासँग गएर अभिवादन गर्यो. सुसेङ wasn't the least bit shy with him. सुसेङले पनि लाज मानेन, ऊ पनि सँगै खेल्न थाल्यो. And apparently feeling very much at ease, went outside with my nephew to play. त्यो भएपछि यो दुईजनाहरू खेल्न गए, सुसेङ र हङ्गा. Mother asked Runtu to have a seat. अनि आमाले रुन्टुलाई बस भन्नुभयो. He hesitated for a bit but finally sat down and leaned his long pipe against the table. अनि उसले चाहिँ एकछिन त अल्टाल गर्यो, हेजिटेट गर्यो, तर पछि बस्यो र उसले त्यो आफ्नो पाइप जुन चुरोट थियो त्यो त्यसलाई टेबलमा राख्यो. He handed the paper package across to me and said. अनि उसले त्यो पेपर जुन पकाल्यो त्यो कागजको त्यो पेपर दिँदै भने. We don't have much of anything in the winter. खासै केही फलेन. But these dried peas are the ones I sunned myself. अनि मैले यो केराउ सुकाएको चाहिँ घाममा सुकाएको सन्ड मैले लिएर आएको छु. प्लिज एक्सेप्ट द मास्टर. यो राख्नुहोस् भन्छ. I asked how he was doing. मैले सोधेँ के कस्तो गरिरहेको छौ भनेर. He shook his head. उसले टाउको हल्लायो. Things are pretty rough. गाह्रो छ. Even my sixth is old enough to help out now. मेरो छैटौँ बच्चाले पनि काममा मद्दत गर्ने भइसक्यो. But still, with all the fighting and people wanting money of you every place you turn, you can never be sure how much. मैले जति कमाएँ जति जे गरे दुःख गरे पनि पुगिरहेको छैन भन्छ. And with all the bad harvest, र खेती पनि राम्रो भइरहेको छैन. We just never seem to have enough to eat. खाने कुरै पुग्दैन. When you do take whatever crop you have got and head up to market, र मैले सबै फलेको चिज सबै लिएर बजार जाँदा पनि you have got to pay a whole bunch of taxes. यति धेरै ट्याक्सहरू तिर्नुपर्छ. Before you ever get there. त्यहाँ जानभन्दा पहिल्यै ट्याक्स तिर्नुपर्छ. Ends up so you don't even get back what you have put into. र फर्किँदाखेरि आफूले तिरेको पैसा जतिको पनि बेचेर आउँदैन. But if you don't take it to the market, र बजारमा नलैजाउँ भने पनि it's just gonna rot in the field anyway. त्यो खेतमै कुहिएर जान्छ. He stopped talking but continued to shake his head. कुरा गर्न बन्द गरे पनि रुन्टु टाउको हल्लाइराख्यो. There was no movement in any of the wrinkles that life had etched upon him, and one would have thought that his face was carved from stone. उसले उसको शरीर, उसको अनुहारमा त्यो चाउरीहरू हल्लिँदा पनि हल्लिँदैन. यस्तो लाग्छ कि ती चाउरीहरू जीवनले दिएको उसको ती चाउरी चोटहरू ढुङ्गाले खोदिएको छ, स्टोनबाट कार्भ गरिएको, स्टोनबाट खोदिएको. He probably felt all the pain. उसले सारा पीडाहरू महसुस गर्यो. But could not find the words to express it. तर उसलाई ती पीडाहरू व्यक्त गर्ने शब्द छैन. He sat in silence for a while and then picked up his pipe and began to smoke. ऊ एकछिन चुप्प लाएर बस्यो र त्यसपछि उसले चुरोट सल्कायो र धुवा पिउन थाल्यो. Through further questioning, अरू क्वेसन गर्दाखेरि mother learned that he still had much to do at home. काम अझै बाँकी छ भन्ने कुरा आमाले थाहा पाइन्. And would have to leave tomorrow. त्यसो भएपछि भोलि जाउला भन्नुभयो. She also found out that he had gone without lunch and told him to go into the kitchen and make himself a little something. अनि केही खा छैन भनेपछि उनले आमाले केही बनाएर खाऊ भन्नुभयो. After he went out, mother and I both sighed at his plight. जब ऊ गयो, आमा र म उसको भाग्य देखेर लामो सास फेर्यौं. Too many children, धेरै बच्चापछि, famine, भोकमरी, harsh taxes, महँगो ट्याक्सहरू, soldiers, सिपाहीहरू, bandits, लुटेराहरू, officials, gentryfolks, यी सम्भ्रान्त वर्गहरू. Everything had plagued him until he had become the lifeless wooden figure we saw today. र यसलाई सबको थिचोमिचोले यो एउटा जीवन सकिएको काठको मूर्ति जस्तो बनेको छ. Mother said that we ought to see to it that he got as much as we weren't going to take with us as possible. हामीले लैजान नमिलेको नसकिने कुराहरू उसलाई दिनुपर्छ भनेर भन्नुभयो आमाले. So we told him to take whatever he wanted. अनि हामीले तिमीले चाहेको लैजाऊ भनेर भन्नुभयो. He selected a few things that very afternoon. उसले केही चिजहरू छान्यो लैजाने कुरा. 2 long tables, टेबलहरू लैजान्छु भने दुईटा. An incense burner, त्यो सुगन्धित बत्ती बाल्ने burner. Some candlesticks, अगरबत्तीहरू. And a set of scales, तराजु. He also asked for the ashes from our kitchen stove. अनि म खरानी पनि लैजान्छु भनेर भन्छ. We cooked with the rice stalks and the ashes would provide good fertilizer for the sandy soil out his way. उसले भन्छ कि यो खरानी राम्रो मल हुन्छ भनेर. He gathered everything together and said he would come for it in a boat the day we moved out. अनि उसले भन्छ हामी जानिदिन, म यी सामानहरू लिन आउँछु बोट लिएर भन्छ. We chatted a bit more that night. हामी केही कुरा गर्यौं, but none of it amounted to anything. तर ती कुराहरूको कुनै अर्थ भएन. Early the next morning we took Susang and headed back on home. र हामी सुसिङलाई लिएर घर फर्क्यौं. 9 days later, the time of our departure finally arrived. 9 दिनपछि अब जाने दिन आयो. Runtu came early in the morning. Runtu बिहानै आयो त्यो दिन. Susang wasn't with him this time. उसले सुसिङलाई लिएर आएको थिएन. But he had brought along a 5-year-old girl to keep an eye on the boat. बरु उसले 5 वर्षको छोरी बोट हेर्न भनेर ल्यायो. We were so busy that we had no time to chat. हामी यति व्यस्त थियौं, कुरा गर्ने समय थिएन. Several other people came by. अरू मानिसहरू पनि आएका थिए. Some to see us off. कोही हामीलाई बिदाई भएको हेर्न आथे. Others to get things. कोही सामान लिन आथे. And still others to get things and to see us off. कोही हेर्न, कोही सामान लिन आएका थिए. By the time we boarded the boat that afternoon, the old house had been swept clean of old and used things of every imaginable size and description. जब हामी बोटमा चढ्यौं दिउँसा त्यो घर सबैले खाली गरिहाले. जे सामान लग्न सकिन्छ लगेर घरलाई एकैछिनमा रित्याए. As we proceeded upriver, हामी अब यात्रा सुरु गर्यौं. The twilight green mountains on either bank took a deeper hues and joined together in a single blue-green mass as they fled away into the distance behind the stern. जब हामी अगाडि बढ्दै थियौं बिस्तारै बिस्तारै हामी पहाडहरूबाट टाढा टाढा भएर जाँदै थियौं. Hunger and I leaned against the window and watched the dimming landscape. त्यो मधुर हुँदै गएको ठाउँलाई Hunger र मैले झ्यालमा अडेस लागेर हेर्यौं. Suddenly he asked. अचानक उसले सोध्यो, Uncle, when we are coming back? Uncle, हामी कहिले फर्किने? Coming back? फर्किने? What are you doing thinking about coming back before we have even left? हामी जान त गएको छैनौं, अहिले फर्किने कुरा गर्छौ भनेर उसले भन्यो. But Susang invited me to go have fun at his place. Susangले मलाई बोलाएको थियो नि उसको ठाउँमा जामला रमाइलो गरौँला भनेर. Engrossed by thoughts of his new friend, Hunger opened his large black eyes even wider in fascination. उसको नयाँ साथीको कुरा उसले सम्झेर उसको आँखा चौडा भयो. Mother and I weren't immune to nostalgia ourselves. हामी पनि घरको याद भुलाउन सकिरहेका थिएनौं. And began talking about Runtu again. र फेरि रुन्टुको कुरा गर्न थाल्यौं. She told me that ever since she had started packing, second sister Ang, the Benka beauty, had never let a single day pass without coming by. जबदेखि हामीले प्याकिङ गर्न सुरु गरेका छौं, सिस्टर याङ जहिले पनि आइरहेकी हुन्छन्. Just the day before yesterday, she had retrieved a dozen or so plates from the pile of rice stock ashes. र अस्ति उताबाट अस्तिचोटि आउँदाखेरि उनले चाहिँ त्यो खरानीमा लुकाएको प्लेटहरू भेटाइन्. After questioning my mother, second sister Ang concluded that they must have been hidden there by Runtu so that he could make off with them when he came from the other stuff. अनि सिस्टर एङले चाहिँ के भनिन् भन्दा यो पक्कै रुन्टुले लुकाएको हुनुपर्छ भनेर भनिन्. Having made this discovery, जब यो कुरा थाहा भयो, she apparently felt that she had rendered us a rewardable service, for she picked up the dog creature without so much as a by your leave and took off with it just as fast as her legs would carry her. यो भनेको बापत उनले चाहिँ त्यो कुखुरालाई चाहिँ छोप्ने या कुकुरले चाहिँ खाना नखाइदियोस् भनेर उ गर्ने डग क्रेजरलाई समातेर यति छिटो त्यहाँबाट हिँडिन् कि त्यति छिटो हिँड्छन् भनेर यिनीहरूले विश्वासै गरेका थिएनन्. Mother said she had never imagined that second sister Ang could develop such speed on those little feet of hers. त्यही सानसाना खुट्टाले त्यति चाँडो हिँड्छन् भनेर कहिले मैले याद गरेको थिएन भन्थिन्. My hometown receded even farther into the distance. मेरो गाउँ बिस्तारै बिस्तारै हराउँदै गयो. And the familiar landscapes of surrounding countryside gradually disappeared. र मैले चिनेको चिन्जानको त्यो क्षेत्र पनि बिस्तारै बिस्तारै हराउन थाल्यो. Strange to say, अनौठो छ भन्दाखेरि there was not a shred of regret in my heart. मेरो मनमा कुनै पश्चाताप पीडा थिएन. I only felt that there was a high and invisible wall all around me. मलाई यति मात्रै महसुस भयो कि मेरो वरिपरि अग्लो अग्लो देख्न नसकिने पर्खाल छ. That isolated me from my fellow human beings, जसले मलाई मेरै समान साथीहरूबाट अलग बनाएको छ. A wall that was squeezing the breath out of my body. र यो वालले मलाई मेरो सास निकाल्न लागिरहेको छ. That usually comforting image of a little hero with silver neck ring standing in the middle of a melon patch was now blurred out of focus and stirred nothing in me but a feeling of melancholy. अब मेरो त्यो हिरो साथी जसले सिल्भर नेक रिङ लगाइरहेको छ, चाँदीको रिङ लगाइरहेछ र त्यो वाटरमेलनको बारीको बीचमा उभिरहेको छ, उसको त्यो आकृति बिस्तारै बिस्तारै मधुर हुँदैछ र मलाई त्यसले कुनै असर गरेको छैन, मात्र एउटा पीडा दिएको छ. Mother and Hunger had both gone to sleep. आमा र हुङ्गर निदाइसक्नु भयो. As I lay there and listened to the gentle slapping of water against the hull, I knew that Runtu and I were going on separate roads. अनि जब म सिपमा आडेस लागेर पानी सिपमा ठोकेको हेरिरहेको थिएँ, मलाई थाहा थियो रुन्टु र म फरक बाटो हिँड्दैछौँ. Even though we are irrevocably cut off from each other, हामी एकअर्कासँग फेरि नभेटिने गरेर छुट्दैछौँ. I thought, didn't Hunger start to miss Suseng when we had barely set out? हुङ्गर र सुसेङ पनि त्यसै गरी हुङ्गरले चाहिँ उसलाई मिस गरिरहेको होला, सुसेङलाई, उसको नयाँ साथीलाई. I hope they will never live like my generation with everyone cut off from everyone else. मलाई आशा छ कि यिनीहरूको जेनेरेसन हाम्रो जेनेरेसन जस्तो एक अर्कासँग अलग भएर बाँच्ने छैन. And yet, just to keep that from happening, I wouldn't want them to have this vagabond life of mine. र यो हुनको लागि म मेरो जस्तो एउटा घुमन्ते फिरन्ते जीवन बिताउन चाहन्न. यिनीहरूको त्यस्तो जीवन नहोस् भन्ने चाहन्छु. Any more than I would want them to have Runtu's barren one. रुन्टुको जस्तो रित्तो जीवन नहोस् भन्ने चाहन्छु. Still less I would want them to muddle through the hedonistic lives other people lived. यिनीहरू त्यस्तो जीवन नजिउन्, भद्रगोल जीवन नजिउन् जसमा यो आफ्नो मात्रै स्वार्थ हेर्ने जीवन नजिउन् भन्ने चाहन्छु. They are out to be a new life for them. उनीहरूको लागि एउटा यस्तो नयाँ जीवन होस्, a life that none of us has ever known. त्यस्तो जीवन जो जीवन हामीले अहिलेसम्म जानेकै छैनौँ. As my thoughts turned toward hope, मेरो सोचाइ आशामा केन्द्रित भयो. A feeling of anxiety suddenly possessed me. मलाई एउटा चिन्ता लाग्यो. When Runtu took the censer and candlesticks, जब उसले त्यो क्यान्डलस्टिक्स अगरबत्तीहरू लिएर गएको थियो, म उपरति हाँसेको थिएँ. I had laughed at him behind his back. Can't let go of that superstitious idol worship of his for a single minute. यसलाई यस्तो पीडा गरिबी हुँदा पनि यसलाई अझै भगवान पूजा गर्न छोडेको छैन भनेर म हाँसेको थिएँ। बट वाट वाज दिस थिङ कल्ड होप? तर यो होप के थियो त? इफ नट एन आइडल द्याट आई ह्याड फ्यासन्ड विथ माई ओन ह्यान्ड्स, त्यो आइडल मैले आफ्नै हातले बनाएको मूर्तिले होइन। द थिङ्स ही होप्ड फर वेयर इमिडिएट, उसको आशाहरू तुरुन्तैका थिए। वाइल वाट आई वान्टेड वाज समवेयर फार अफ, तर मैले चाहेका आशाहरू अलि टाढा थिए। इन द मर्की डिस्टेन्स, अलि टाढा नदेखिने ठाउँमा। द्याट वाज द ओन्ली डिफरेन्स। उसले आजको भोलिको आशा गर्थ्यो भने म अलि टाढाको आशा गर्थेँ, किनकि आजको मलाई चिन्ता थिएन। एज अ lay there half asleep, म आधा निद्रामा थिएँ। An emerald green plot of land by the sea appeared before my eyes. अब हरियो भूमि देखा पर्यो मेरो आँखा अगाडि। In the deep blue sky above it hung a moon full of full and golden. एउटा जुन देखा पर्यो, पुरा जुन, पुरा चन्द्रमा। Hope isn't the kind of thing that you can say either exists or doesn't exist. Hope या आशा त्यस्तो चिज होइन जो तिमीले भन्न सक्छौ कि यो छ या छैन। I thought to myself, मैले सोचेँ, it's like a path across the land. यो त एउटा त्यस्तो बाटो हो जो जमिनमा छ। It's not there to begin with. सुरुमा त्यो छैन। But when lots of people go to the same way, it comes into being. तर धेरै मानिसहरू त्यही बाटो लगातार हिँड्यो भने त्यो बाटो अस्तित्वमा आउँछ। आशा त्यस्तै हो।